1,500 kilometers southeast of Moscow, on the border with Kazakhstan, the Orenburg region is a real Russian crossroads. Sitting on the Ural River, it literally marks the spot where Europe meets Asia, and it's home to more than 2 million people. Orenburg's got to be one of Russia's most multicultural regions. There are more than 100 different nationalities that make up this area, and to celebrate just a few of them, the government's built this, the National Village. Back when it was founded in the early 18th century, Orenburg was a much bigger place, covering the territory of 7 modern Russian regions and part of Kazakhstan. The years may have made it smaller, but this is still a genuine melting pot. Every building on this street is dedicated to a different culture, and within a couple of hundred meters, you can go from Belarus to Tatarstan and end up in Bashkiria. Each nationality has its own museum, and if you're looking to brush up on some history, there's a guide who'll give you a whistle-stop tour.
This is a traditional men's costume, the warrior's costume. The Bashkirs joined the Russian state in the mid-16th century. They did military service and took part in all the wars waged by Russia. Bashkir cavalry took part in the War of 1812 and ultimately reached Paris.
And when they weren't fighting, the Bashkirs were busy creating a delicacy which is still popular in Russia today. Their own distinctive brand of honey. Kept in here and then it all goes into the honey. Fantastic. 2 different types. If anything's guaranteed to make me hungry, it's talking about food. And that's another area where the National Village comes into its own. Whether you're looking to try Russian vodka or Kazakh horse milk, there are 10 national restaurants to choose from. And apparently, Ukraine has the best in town. Admittedly, my knowledge of Ukrainian cuisine begins and ends with borscht. But then, my waitress came up with a very authentic suggestion. Now, I'm a little bit suspicious about this dish, but I'm assured that it is a Ukrainian favourite. Spasibo. This is sala, and basically, it's salted pig fat. So, it looked like I was going hungry, but that wasn't going to stop me seeking out a few more local delicacies. But these ones, you're supposed to wear rather than eat. This is the Orenburg shawl, and it's been famous in Russia for centuries. Made from goat hair and silk, these designs have been passed down through families for generations. The people here say this is the warmest, best quality shawl in the world. And if you're looking for a bargain, there's really only one place to go. Just wondering if my mum would like this. I don't know, what do you think? The moment the ladies spot a potential customer, they'll make sure you know exactly what's on offer.
How much is this?
1,000. 350.
Just like the goats, the shawls are available in either white or grey, and it's a popular spot for tourists and businesswomen alike who come to barter with the locals. But be careful, they can spot a sucker a mile off.
See, now everyone wants to sell it.
Take more.
I'm going to run out of money. It's too much choice. Everyone's got something, haven't they? Suddenly I'm the most popular man in the market. Look at this. Everyone wants one. I'm trying to get away. Спасибо, женщины. Considerably poorer, I made my way out of the market. But I wanted to find out exactly what it takes to make the best shawl in the world. See, now this may be the end product, but this is where it all begins, with the famous Orenburg goat. Now, they haven't got any of their fur left because it's all been shorn, but, of course, it does take a bit of a process before it goes from this to this. Здравствуйте. Минор?
Здравствуйте.
James, очень приятно. Okay, let's see the платки, yeah? Let's see some of the shawls.
Идемте, проходите.
Спасибо. Tanya's been making them for more than 50 years, and she still follows a method that could have come straight out of the 18th century. It's a long process that starts with the goat hair being thinned through a comb. Oh, yes. Okay. Let's see if I've got what it takes here. I think I'm doing it right. It looks simple, but you need to be pretty careful where you put your fingers.
It's getting softer and softer.
I just stabbed myself. Yeah, it was good, doesn't it? I think. You make a nice scarf with that. But that's just the start. Then the fine hair has to be mixed with silk and transferred onto a spool. And that's not so easy. This is much more difficult. Okay. Okay, now this is actually really quite tricky. Apparently this takes a lot of training, so I may be able to thin it, but I don't think I'm going to get it onto the stick here. Tanya's awards and certificates are dotted all around her home, but the pièce de résistance is in the next room. A massive, intricate commission to commemorate the 210th anniversary of the birth of Russian poet Alexander Pushkin.
A big shawl takes a month of work.
Wow, so that's a month's work that goes into making one of these completely by hand. This factory's been making and exporting shawls for 70 years. 300 people are employed here in a round-the-clock knitting extravaganza. With lines of ladies busily working away, some of the scenes here could easily be straight out of a Soviet photo album. But this is a very modern operation. Each aspect of the process is handled by massive machines. The goat hair is combed and checked for quality, and then spun together with silk onto hundreds of spools. There's so much thread in this one room that if you tied it all together, it'd reach to Dublin. It's fed into dozens of automatic sewing machines, which can knock out a shawl in around 25 minutes. And once they've been made, the final details are added by a seamstress or a willing apprentice. This is where each shawl gets its own colourful finishing touch. And the ladies here have kindly allowed me to show off my own great sewing talent and create an individual masterpiece. Aside from my efforts, the whole operation seemed exceptionally efficient, although it did kill a bit of the romance about the shawl's story. Orenburg is justly famous for its shawl throughout Russia, but the region's also gaining a bit of a reputation as a religious centre, and that's mainly down to this beautiful new church complex and a rather extraordinary man who runs it. That's Nikolai. When Father Nikolai first arrived in 1992, there was nothing but earth here. Over the last 17 years, he's built a church, a school, and gained a thriving congregation. No small achievement in itself, but it's not the reason why he's one of the most famous men in Orenburg. Now, with a busy parish to run and rebuild, Father Nikolai's a pretty busy guy, but there are quite a few other people here too who take up rather more of his time. He may be a priest, but first and foremost, Nikolai's a dad, to the largest family in the country. He's officially adopted 72 children, from homes, orphanages, and even off the streets. It's not easy looking after the equivalent of 6.5 football teams, but Nikolai says the children share a common bond.
They've all lost their parents, but now they find themselves in a new family. That is what unites them, and they try to be tolerant of one another, regardless of their nationality or habits. And they really love each other.
It's been a roller coaster ride since Nikolai adopted his first child, Nastya, back in the early 90s. Nikolai already has 20 grandchildren, and more are on the way. Most of the family were away with Mum on their summer holiday, but those who are left really seem to be a close-knit unit. They work and play with each other, and the older children took responsibility for the little ones. Their faith is also a strong bonding point, and everybody attends daily services. In fact, meal times are one of the few occasions where they all split up. After all, you'd need a pretty big kitchen for a table for 70. So we did have a little bit of a fight earlier over who exactly was going to do all of tonight's washing up, but we have finally managed to get everyone together for one big photo. So, everybody say cheese and a big hello from the largest family in Russia. Cheese! For an only child, it had been an eye-opening and ear-shattering experience. And I knew the next people I was going to meet were going to be equally as loud and interesting. In fact, I've been told they were out of this world. Now, you might not believe it, but apparently Orenburg is a centre for alien activity. 1 in 4 people here say that they've seen a UFO, and some believe in it so much, they even write songs about it. These guys are my UFO, and they're self-confessed alien nuts and wannabe rock stars. They're recording their first album, and each of the songs has an extraterrestrial theme. This tune's all about how we're going to be abducted and enslaved in a few years' time. I was finding it hard to put a name to their style of music, so they did it for me.
Hi, we are my UFO.
And our style of music is intergalactic rock.
It's a new one on me, but give me this rather than emo any day. And apparently, the songs are inspired by personal experience.
I once saw a creature called a riptoid. It's a very ancient creature, representing a very ancient race. One encounter was enough for me to understand that they treat us like animals. Just as we breed cows and chickens, that's how they breed us.
Pretty scary stuff. So just be careful. You might get to see Russian music's next big thing in Orenburg, but make sure you keep your eyes on the skies. Thanks, guys. That was really awesome. Cheers. Good luck.
Bye.
Aliens. Yeah, right.
Hungry for the full story? We've got it firsthand. The biggest issues get a human voice, face to face with the newsmakers on RT.
Orenburg may have a reputation for flying saucers, but there are plenty more grounded attractions here, and there are some that might genuinely surprise you. Now, when I was told about Orenburg's children's railway, I thought, well, maybe I'm going to a museum or even a model convention. But, as it turns out, it's a bit more of a professional operation than that.
Attention passengers, the train is leaving. We wish you all a safe journey.
Yes, this really is a functioning railway, where all the staff, from the drivers to the ticket collectors, are 16 or under. And it works. It's not often I put my life in the hands of people who are still getting pocket money rather than a salary, but as you can see, this is a pretty popular service. And in fact, there's been a railway running here for the best part of 60 years. And you can still take a trip into the countryside for the equivalent of about 50 cents. Один chance. Спасибо. The train runs every afternoon, dropping passengers young and old off at campsites in the neighbouring woods. It's subsidised by the government, and all the children who participate get to work towards a professional qualification. And despite their age, they take their jobs very seriously. This seems like a really serious responsibility for such young guys. I mean, effectively, you're running a real railway here.
Working here is a great responsibility. I'm 13 years old, and I'm going to get more training on a real-life railway.
With such conscientious employees, this is a railway that seems to be in good hands. And exactly 30 minutes later, we were back at the station.
Well, that was comfortable, on time, and about as expensive as a packet of crisps. I think some British rail companies could learn quite a lot from these guys.
And if children running a railway system isn't exactly something you'd expect to find in the middle of Russia, neither is the local wildlife.
Such big birds, such small brains. But clever enough to... yeah, hello.
Meet Ozzy and friends, residents at Orenburg's slightly ironically named Lucky Bird Farm. It's the region's only ostrich farm, and it was opened 2 years ago.
Здравствуйте. James.
Good day. Victor.
Nice to meet you. Wow.
This beauty here is a female black African ostrich.
Stay so still.
People have been engaged in this business for 1,000 years. In Australia, Africa, and in Europe, already 300 years. But here in Russia, it's still a very new development.
But potentially a very profitable one. Each bird can yield over 100 kilograms of meat, along with feathers and extremely large eggs, assuming you can get them away from their irate parents.
That's like lifting a brick. I think you could, you do about 20 breakfasts with that. Be a little bit wary of Mum here, who I'm not sure is too keen on me picking up her potential offspring. But I have to be a little bit careful. It's okay.
Ostriches aren't generally aggressive outside of mating season, but I always feel that you're probably best off on the other side of a fence of something that can kick you to death. And it doesn't hurt to try and make friends.
As you might expect, the world's biggest birds have a pretty big appetite. These are only the babies, and each one of these guys eats 9 times a day and can go through 2 kilograms of food each. So, I thought I'd bring them a little snack. And hopefully, no one is going to bite my hand off here.
And it's not just ostriches who live here. There are peacocks, pigeons, and an extremely stylish brood of Chinese chickens. And if you get tired of your feathered friends, there are plenty of furry ones too. Assuming you can handle the overload of cuteness.
Oh, yes. Right. This is Daddy Rabbit. His name is Gosha, and I think he may be the biggest bunny that I've ever seen. You'd certainly need a lot of carrots to keep him happy, wouldn't you?
And once you've made sure that the animals have had their lunch, you can pop into the farm cafe for yours.
I think it would have been wrong to come to an ostrich farm and not try a little bit of what's on offer. So now that our egg has been drilled and scrambled, you get an omelette, enough to feed 6 people with plenty of room for seconds.
A hearty meal by anyone's standards, but ostriches aren't the only unusual animals making an appearance on Orenburg's farms. But to find them, you need to take a trip out into the wilderness.
Now, Orenburg is right on the Kazakhstan border, and you don't have to drive far before you find yourself deep in the Russian steppe. It's not exactly a brilliant place for a car, but there are a few things here that really love those wide open spaces. Now, out here on the steppe, this is pretty much far from your run-of-the-mill farm, and the animals they have here are a lot bigger than average. Check these guys out. Surprise? Camels in the middle of Russia.
This is a camel. I turn them out to grass in the morning. They eat grass all day, and they don't need special tend.
But these are Bactrian 2-hump camels, and unlike their Arabic cousins, they're native to the Asian plains. They're kept for their strong hair and their milk, and spend their days grazing out here on the steppe, and taking the occasional bath. According to their keepers, they're also very friendly, so I thought I'd try and tempt one with a little snack. Just wondering if I can persuade this guy to at least try a little bit of apple. I'm not sure he liked that. No dessert. I'm going to leave him to his main course, I think. My time in Orenburg was almost up, but there was one last place I knew I had to visit. This is the town of Soliletsk, home to the region's biggest tourist attraction, but underneath... Salt has been mined here for almost 200 years. The entire town lies on a thick bed of it, and the tunnels go down 350 meters below the surface. Never been down a mine shaft before, so I'm a little bit nervous. But this way, I get to see how they bring out 1,000 tons of salt from the earth here every single day. See you at the bottom. It's a long way down, and it's easy to walk for what seems like hours here without seeing another person. The air is so dry and thick with salt, you can actually taste it. It's really eerie down here. I never imagined that a mine would actually be so quiet that you could really hear a pin drop here. And it's pitch black. The tunnels extend for miles in every direction, and it was a big relief when I finally saw something up ahead. We'd made it to the heart of the mine, and the day's salt harvesting was about to begin. This machine almost acts like a giant razor, literally shaving away the salt from this huge block so it can be collected and transported to the factory for processing. But I think I'd better get out of the way before it starts to do some real damage. Tons of salt are gathered in every batch before being dropped through a hole and onto the mine's conveyor system, which takes it up to the surface. I was pretty happy to get above ground and into the processing factory myself. Machines separate the salt into degrees of purity, and then it's just time for the finishing touches. So this is where everything ends up once the salt has been mined, sorted. It can then be bagged, sealed up, and it's ready to go on your chips. But these salt deposits aren't just big business. They're also the perfect place to head for a little R&R. Oh, I do like to be beside the seaside. Oh, I do like to be beside the sea. Except that's my tough luck, really, because we're actually several thousand kilometers away from the coast here. But Orenburg does have the next best thing. These are Soliletsk's salt lakes, and when the sun's out, this is the place where everyone comes to work on their tan. Now, this lake is actually more than 30% salt. It's sort of like Orenburg's answer to the Dead Sea, which means that when you're in it, you just pop around like a cork. Perfect if you want to enjoy the latest trashy paperback. But one little bit of advice, you really don't want to shave before you get in here. It's just a bad idea. And if you're not up for swimming, there are plenty of more unusual activities to try. Just shows you how salty these lakes are. I was only in the water for about 10 minutes. I'm absolutely covered with the stuff. But that's not the only treat that the Orenburg salt lakes have in store for tourists here. There's another place that's a firm favourite. But if you want to really enjoy it, you've got to get your hands dirty. And a whole lot more. Because if you're going to have a mud bath, you've got to do it properly. And hundreds of people take the time to get thoroughly filthy in this open-air health spa. So, apparently, this mud is so full of minerals, and it's supposed to cure absolutely everything. And...
This gives me a chance to pretend like I'm a hippopotamus.
Whether you're feeling a little under the weather or just fancy a wallow, this will leave you feeling like a new man. Just make sure someone's told you exactly where the showers are before you go in.
The creature from the Black Lagoon. Wonder if anyone's going to want to give me a lift home tonight.
Once I'd cleaned myself up, it was finally time to head back to Moscow. Orenburg really is somewhere you can expect the unexpected, where you can get business tips from a group of children, or just chill out and munch on an ostrich burger. But it's also one of the country's most diverse regions, and a place that provides a real flavour of a modern multicultural Russia.